L5, she's recording. Right, in here again this evening. Lost track of where we're into. We're on lots of little jobs and bits and pieces at the moment, so catching little silly things that I haven't done throughout the rest of the build. We're trying to work on the dash cluster at the minute, making a combination of things so that everything works. Trying to achieve a few things here. Ideally, well no, ideally I want to use a dash cluster out of a GTI so that I've got the tacho that goes to 8 grand, because the D Turbo from factory has the tachos that go to 6 grand, and anyone that's been in my car will notice it spends most of its life somewhere roughly around about there, which is kind of annoying. I also find the red line at 5 grand to be incredibly irritating, so it'd be really cool to get the dash cluster out the 6 working, bearing in mind that then goes to 8 grand and the red line is at a far more suitable location. So that is the project at the minute. I think it's actually going to work in my favour anyway, because the D-Turbo dashes are actually driven from the little funny sensor on the D-Turbo on the back of the flywheel, which is a bit of a unique setup, whereas the 6 dashes are actually driven by the ECU, which is ideal because I'm pretty sure they just have a PWM input on them on one of the pins on the back. So that'll be a lot easier to input from, output from the 1280 into that. I can easily make one of the aux outs run a PWM frequency which is relative to the current RPM. So what we're trying to do here is I've got several dashes. I've got 2 6 dashes here, one with a mechanical speedo and one with an electric one, because obviously I want to use the whole GTI unit if I can, but I don't want the mileage to change. So I'm just taking them apart really at the moment, trying to figure out how we're going to make this work. I'm pretty sure I've got a solution. I've already managed to find the pin I think that's going to the tacho with the aid of the Haynes manual. Like I've said in previous videos, the only use of Haynes manual is the wiring diagrams, which shouldn't be taken for a gold mine, but they're generally fairly accurate, or at least you can normally figure out what's going on eventually, even if they're not correct. So I'm going to finish taking this apart now and see if we can get this mileage adjusted. I'm not going to be able to, originally I was hoping I might be able to swap the whole cluster over, but I can't. The dashes are actually made by 2 completely different people. One's a BDO unit and the other one's a something else, I can't remember now. But they're not interchangeable, so the 6 ones are, but that isn't much advantage because I don't have a cable speedometer and I want the mileage out of that one, so we're going to have to see if we can actually take that apart and change over the clocks. And now I should point out there is nothing dodgy going on here, and this is not a video on how to clock your car. This is just me trying to keep the mileage genuine rather than add 30k to my clocks. Not that it really makes any difference because the car is what it is, but it would just be nice to keep that correct. Right, there we go. So this is basically the hybrid dash we come up with. Bits and pieces from the 6 dash and the D-Turbo dash, and I just found the best bezel surround I could find. It's not in the greatest of shape, but it's better than the other ones I've got here. So now I'm going to go inside the car and get this fitted, and I need to find the wire on the loom that is the tacho wire, which should be the 3rd pin on that top connector there, if my wiring diagram is correct, and then figure out what frequency I need to send it to hopefully drive that there. But obviously initially I'll just send it anything to see if it moves. Inside the car here now, you can see where the dash is taken out, and these are all the factory connectors. So I've just run a cable up from the ECU. This is on aux 7, so there are auxiliary outputs that you can use for driving all sorts of different things, sort of shift lights and tachometers, fuel pumps, any kind of relay, anything really. So I'll use this one for the tacho. So we've just ran that up to here. Now we've isolated the wire that we need on the back side of, if I can find it again, sorry, it's this connector here. So for anyone else trying to do this, you need the top connector in the middle, and it's a 3rd pin. So that's the cable you need to drive the tacho on the dash. So I'm going to solder and heat shrink that cable onto the back of that plug now, just to tidy that up. Plug it all back in, and then we can see about setting up the output. Right, so I'm just on the aux outputs module now. So we've just put a link on aux 7 for the frequency down the bottom there, which takes the RPM input. So if we fire up now, we should have a tacho. Ideal. And the speedometer is working also if I just drop it in gear now. That is a job well done, boys. Okay, just to give people a bit of an idea what's actually going on here at the moment. At the minute I'm working on the turbo control. So basically I've written a bit of logic in the software now that looks at basically map 1 and map 2 inputs, which is the manifold pressure and then also the pressure going into the primary turbo. And then comparing those, calculating a pressure ratio. So the way I've actually gone about getting that working is I have basically 2 pages in the ECU, one dedicated for each turbo with the PID controllers in them. So the VNT one is controlling the VNT and there's another page controlling the HX35. Obviously one is being controlled by external wastegate with a MAC valve. The other one is being controlled with that Heller actuator. Now the Heller actuator itself actually has, I've actually created another page in the ECU because that actually has its own control loop with its feedback from the actuator itself. But that page is essentially just fed a duty cycle output from the main boost control page. So as far as the boost control is concerned, it's just got to send out 2 duty cycles, one for each turbo, and the rest of the work is done on another page. So what I've then done is create my main boost control page, which is where the pressure ratio is calculated. It's where I've got tables for what you're looking at here now is basically the map, the requested map table. So that's RPM versus TPS and the map pressure that I'm requesting. And then we also have a static value, sorry, a 2D table, which is the pressure ratio target. So that's RPM versus whatever pressure ratio I want. The idea of this is to try and hold the primary turbo down where it's peak flow at all times. So across the RPM range, and then meet the requested map by altering the boost pressure of the second turbo to obviously boost the overall map pressure up to where we want it. So what I'm really doing here at the moment is just running the car up at several different load sites. I'm just setting the dyno at different RPMs so I can load the car up and just confirm the boost control is working. I've had to make a few adjustments to some of the PID settings to stop it oscillating, but other than that we seem to be getting away with it, and it actually seems to be working extremely well. I just run the car up now. I've got the dyno set at 2500 RPM steady state, which is currently at about 1700. You can see the RPM on the screen here. If we look at the tacho, it might be easier. So if I bring the car up on load now, and I'll put the camera on the boost gauges, you should see we've got the pressure ratio set about 1.5 at the moment. So if you look at the boost gauges, this is the manifold pressure, and this gauge here is the pressure coming into the primary turbo from the HX35, from the secondary turbo. So as I load the car up now, you'll see the boost stabilise. We've got about 10 psi, I'm only quarter throttle at the moment, just maintaining speed. So we'll load it up. Sites, making sure it's all working. I can control where it's loading up here, so I can press page down, it'll pull the engine down. Press down again. Okay, it's a pretty freezing Wednesday evening, so we're going to do a few little jobs on the car tonight. I got a 800 bar rail sensor to put in there, so that's the fuel pressure sensor that goes in the fuel rail. There's a 1500 bar sensor in there at the moment. So I was putting it together and I didn't actually realise I didn't already have one, so I had to just put one in there that I had at the time, because that wasn't actually a new sensor that went in. So I'm now going to stick the 800 bar sensor in there, just to give me a little bit more flexibility with the rail pressure, because I'm almost maxing that out at the moment with these injectors. We're going to be needing some bigger injectors fairly shortly, because the durations are getting up already and I'm up against the 1500 bar rail pressure sensor, so we're going to be needing to upgrade those. But at the moment, if I could just get a bit more rail pressure out of it, that's going to keep me going for a minute. Obviously with a 1500 bar rail sensor you can't actually run 1500 bar, because obviously if you actually max the sensor out, then the ECU can't actually see what's going on, so the PID will get quite wound up. So you've got to run a bit underneath that to give it a bit of overhead for the PID to work. So we've got the other sensor here. We've also got that's the rail pressure sensor there. If the camera will focus, something like that. Also got a new map sensor here for the inlet, because the one we got in there at the moment is a Z-Tronics 5 bar 75 psi one, which is actually the one I actually bought it like 2 or 3 years ago when I very first started building this thing to go in this. But that was the original intention, but because I sort of never actually got around to doing this car, it got retrofitted on the dyno, and that's basically the map sensor that we've been using on the dyno for the last 2 years. It's been working fine, but we've always had trouble with it ever since I can remember, to be honest with it. The output is wrong. It seems to still be linear, but it always seems to be about 4 or 5 psi out. So we've always had to have it corrected on the computer, and obviously I've got it being corrected now, but I do kind of have my doubts as to whether it really is still linear, or whether it's just because it's such a wide range sensor, the area that we're looking at is close enough that you can't tell. So anyway, what I've decided to do is just go out and buy another one. So I bought another AEM 5 bar again, same thread, same plug, so it will just plug straight in, and then we'll keep that one just for the dyno use, because it does work fine, it's just it isn't actually functioning quite as it's meant to. So that's the one you can see just down there. So we'll unplug that one, screw that one out, and put this replacement one in there as well at the same time, and then I can take out my plus 14 to the signal. It isn't actually plus 14, but I've got a little summer in the logic at the moment that's just bumping that output up to where it needs to be, so that the ECU can see the right pressure. Right, we just brought the booster press a little bit up in the top end and gave it a little bit more timing. So we'll see if we can do that now.